This week, we are starting to talk about decimals. And with decimals, we'll talk about percentages, which are almost the same thing. And this is a week that should look a whole lot like our first week, because we're back to place value. And we're even going to do two of the same games that we did the first week. Later on, we'll do the 101 and out and reject, but with decimals and not just whole numbers. So this should flow nicely because it resembles what we have seen before. But holler and stop me if I'm ever saying something that's going too fast or confusing or something like that. So I want to make this little chart bigger for one thing. So I'm going to duplicate this page and go to the duplicate and copy that and clear off everything else and put it back very big. Just because for the recording, I want to be able to read these numbers at the bottom, and we can't. Okay, let's get started. So we use decimals all the time in real life, especially when making change. So if I wanted to write the decimal value for each coin, then that should be really easy. Like for a quarter, that's just 0.25, 25 cents. If it helps you to write a dollar sign and a zero, you can, but we don't need to. One moment. So I did the quarter, you do the others. What numbers do I write below them?
.10 for 0.5.
It's not actually 0.5. Let's talk about that one in a moment. So what do we do for the dollar coin?
1.00.
Yeah, we could do a 1. We could put a .0 if we want. We could actually put as many zeros as we want. This is just saying I have no tenths, I have no hundredths, I have no thousandths. So unless we were specifically told to write to a certain amount of place value digits, then we could write as many as we wanted. If you want to write 1, we certainly can, but it's not required. Just a plain number 1 is also counted as a decimal number, even if it's only a whole number also. Okay, so with our nickel, one moment, let me pause. If I bring in this hundreds grid that we'll use later, then I can shade in tenths. And I know you understand this at least at one point, because we did this when we were talking about the fractions of tenths. So that green bar is a tenth because I could do it 10 times. So when I write 0.1 for my dime, or 0.10, because again, the extra zeros don't do anything, then I'm saying I have 1/10 of my dollar. Everyone okay that this 0.1 is the same as that 0.1, just represented in two very different ways?
Yes.
So now, how much do I shade? Let's erase the green. How much do I shade for my nickel on my chart in the corner? My 10 by 10 grid.
5.
5. So I want to write that. And we know that you know how much a nickel is, and we know that you could shade that no problem. So looking back at this place value thing down here, I have 5 of these hundredths. It doesn't go all the way down to a 10th. So what I want to do is put a 5 in the hundredths place. Whoops, make it a pen, not a highlighter. And unfortunately, I can't just kind of imagine a gap between the decimal point and the hundredths to say 5 hundredths. So I have to put something in that place value digit. So I will do that. I have no tenths and I have a 5. So that's what I want to write for my nickel. By the way, if I put them together, I had in my pocket a dime and a nickel. I could do that. Pardon my artwork, which is not great. And that would be 0.15. I have 1/10. There's that 10th column. And I have 5 more hundredths. Okay, so far?
Yes.
What would I do then for my penny over there?
0.01.
Yeah, that's just 1/100th. So it's a 1 in the 100th. And just like before, I have to put the 0 to hold that place value. So we know that that 1 is hundredths. So we have numbers for all our coins. Any questions about that?
No.
We talked about how to write and pronounce big numbers earlier in the term. And we were perhaps surprised that you're not supposed to, on a check, use the word and until you get to the decimal point. So you don't write a check that's $120. And you can, the check will work fine. But officially, if you were formal, then you wouldn't do it that way, which was news to me. I hadn't learned that growing up. But now we have the decimal. So we're actually going to be able to use the word and when we write numbers. We can say this number is 24. And remember to use a hyphen after anything that is a Y. 24 and then how I formally pronounce this, if I wasn't just being like working in a study group and saying 24.3185, which works great when we're not formal. But the formal way to say this would be 24 and then I have to take this part, the decimal part, and pretend it's a whole number. But when I say it, it's not going to end in tens and hundreds with S's at the end. Well, it has S's. It's not going to end in tens and hundreds, but tenths and hundredths. So I'm actually going to move to the next slide where I have more room to write and we can see it better. And I made it a little too big. And so this was 24. And so the 3185, I'm going to pretend it's a whole number, 3,185. So I'll put that first. 3. And I'm saying and when I shouldn't, because of my own habit. 3,100. And then we label the smallest place value we use, which in this case is 10 thousandths. So the good news is that you pretty much never have to do this because as you can see, it's a lot of writing, but now you have seen it before. And there might be some times in the textbook where they write things out this way. So summarize again, the whole number you write like the whole number, you put the word and to represent the decimal point, and then you take all the decimal digits and pretend they're a whole number, and then put the label of the smallest decimal digit that you got to, 10 thousandths in this case. Questions on that one?
No.
Okay. We could do more examples, but I don't think it's important enough yet. Let's go back to other things. Here's the little one. High performance gaming optical mice can measure movement as small as 6/10,000ths of an inch. How would we write that? Well, the 10,000ths was here, so 6/10,000ths. I would put my decimal point, and then I'd have to fill in zeros for all the places I skipped over. So same thing, you pretend this is a whole number, 6, and then you add the label of whatever the smallest decimal point you got to. If I wanted, I could put a 0 in front of these. If I wanted, I could put zeros in front of those, or even money signs, because they're money. But that doesn't make it correct enough. Okay, I'm going to pause a moment.